You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU podcast. Today's episode is an interview with AJ Duffy. AJ is a quarterback transfer from Florida State who committed to play at San Diego State under Sean Lewis last week. AJ was a four-star high school recruit in the class of 2022. Is originally from the Inland Empire in California, did transfer to play at IMG Academy in Florida for a senior year before committing to Florida State, playing the last two seasons at Florida State. He was a redshirt his freshman year and then played as a redshirt freshman in this past season that just is about to conclude. During his two seasons at Florida State, AJ only threw 7 passes as he played behind Heisman candidate Jordan Travis this year before his injury knocked him out for the rest of the season. And he'll be looking to come in and compete with returning quarterbacks and other new quarterbacks such as Danny O'Neal, who's a high school class of 24 commit. So it was cool to catch up with AJ, get to know him a little bit, and find out why he chose to be an Aztec at his next stop in the collegiate world. Let's get to it. Afterwards, Paul and I will be back and to give our takeaways about our conversation with AJ. We want to welcome one of the newest Aztecs to the podcast, AJ Duffy. How's it going today, AJ?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Very well, thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time. You committed to San Diego State as a transfer recently, I believe in the last week. You played 2 years at Florida State. Can you just take us through your decision to enter the portal, who you were considering, and why ultimately San Diego State was the place you wanted to continue your college career at?
Gotcha. I was just kind of looking for a restart when I entered the portal, just kind of new coaches, new system, and just kind of looking for that fresh start. And when I entered the portal, I was hearing out from a good amount of schools, Minnesota, Vanderbilt, Bowling Green, Tulane, San Diego State. There was a couple others, but those were the main ones. And then ultimately got to know Coach Lewis and Coach Johnson, and then already known a good deal about the area. Just I'd been up there 1,000 times with just family hanging out and all that stuff. And then after my visit, there were 2 coaches I really liked, and I saw the view for the program and the direction they want to head, and I just really wanted to play for him, so I committed.
I believe you took your visit last week. What was your interaction with Sean Lewis and the new staff?
It was really good. They seem like just real genuine people who all love ball, and they're worried about the right stuff, which in my opinion is really, really big to me because of how the crazy direction college football is going. And so it was cool to see coaches that are real genuine and just love ball.
So tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, what is it that they specifically like that you thought was, maybe a little bit against the trend of where college football is going?
It wasn't because in the recruiting process before, it wasn't that long ago out of high school, and
right.
It seemed like coaches were just kind of trying to sell themselves more and promise fake dreams and kind of false kind of stuff, or in a sense, I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying, but
yeah.
That's kind of what I mean. And then they were just guys who were just telling me about themselves and just got to know them. And it was just even outside of football, they're good people and just happen to be great coaches.
I'd like to know more about one of them because we're all still getting to know the staff as well. I mean, they're not even 3 weeks in, and so you could give us a lot of great insight into them. But Matt Johnson is the new QB coach. What can you tell us about Coach Johnson?
Oh, I love Coach Johnson. He's a really cool guy. He's younger. He's energetic, and then I also like that he's played for Coach Lewis, so he's already gone through everything that I'm gonna go through, and he'll be someone that understands it, the everyday aspect of it. So I think that's really cool to have a person like that coaching me.
And you mentioned that he played for Coach Lewis, and He starred, man. I mean, the stats and the
Yeah.
numbers that he put up were just incredible. But what has he told you about QBs who thrive in Sean Lewis's system?
He's just told me the kind of mentality you have to be. You have to process fast, with the up tempo offense, and then you kind of have to be a guy who could do it all, throw it, run it when you need it, and just kind of be that guy.
Now, I know you're currently still in Florida, but when will you actually make the move to San Diego? And are you planning on being there at the start of the semester in mid-January?
Yes, sir. I'll be there. I think the semester starts the 16th, and then I'll be there a few days before just to move in and then ship my car and all my stuff down.
Nice. Your commitment came on the heels of another nationally rated quarterback, Danny O'Neal, who's a class of 24 guy coming out of high school, committing as well. Have you had any discussions with Danny? Are you eager to get in there with him and the rest of the quarterbacks in the room?
No, I haven't had any discussions with him yet, but when I get to school and stuff, that's kind of when I'll meet most of those guys. I'm real fired up to do that, and I already know one of the quarterbacks, Kyle Crum from we went to middle school together and just working out in the IE. So he's a great guy, and I already know him.
What have you been talking to him during this process since San Diego State was a team that was on your radar? And what did he say about the school and the new staff that maybe you hadn't yet figured out yet?
I talked to him a little bit during my visit and stuff, and he was just pumping him up and pumping the school up about how much he likes it. And then one of my close friends, Josh Hunter, who was a DB there,
Mm-hmm.
I actually grew up with him, played baseball, football, all that through Pop Warner and stuff. And then I played for his dad's baseball team. So I kind of leaned on him and just asked him a few questions and just got to get his like feel for everything. And then it was cool. I got to hang out with him on my visit too.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool. We had Josh about a year ago or 2 years ago on the podcast on this
Yeah.
Annapolis station. But I mean, you mentioned that Sean Lewis, Matt Johnson, they're looking for a QB who can do it all. Just for people who maybe aren't familiar with your game, how would you describe it? And how do you think it fits into those things that you described?
Gotcha. I think I'm a guy who I like to throw it around and have fun playing. I think I could fit well in the system just because in high school it's a very similar offense where it's up tempo, a lot of spread, a lot of down the field throws and stuff like that. And then protection wise and stuff, it's similar to stuff I've done. And then I could run around if I need to too. And I know there's always that aspect of his offense that's really good. So I think it fits me well.
In your recruitment profile on 247 Sports, they compared you to Bo Nix. Do you agree with that comparison? And are there other quarterbacks maybe that you've modeled your game after to kind of just give Aztec fans an idea of what they'll be seeing?
Yeah, that's a freaking cool comparison. I mean, he's a great guy, great player. So I'll take that all day. But guys I like are, of course, Tom Brady. I mean, my dad's from Boston, so
Okay.
grew up watching him a lot and just kind of the mental aspect about how much he cares about the game and the work he puts in. So I kind of try and take that aspect from him. And then as far as play wise, I've always liked Aaron Rodgers, just kind of a more athletic pocket passer who can kind of do it all, but likes to throw it mostly.
Um, you're from the Inland Empire originally, right? You played at Rancho Verde High School your first 2 years until your junior year, which is canceled due to the pandemic. What can you tell us about your time at Rancho Verde?
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, getting to play for my dad and go start as a freshman, it was something that I'll never forget and I'll always remember just because of kind of watching him being a coach and then like all the past players he's had, the quarterbacks he's had that have been pretty good in college and stuff. So it was kind of cool for me to go through that experience and it was one of my favorites for sure.
Have you played quarterback your whole life, or did you play other stuff before you kind of settled into quarterback?
I played pretty much every position and then until about middle school is when I started just really focusing on quarterback and yes sir.
The Inland Empire is a big, you know, part of Aztec basketball, and it has been. Lamont Butler is one of those guys who's a big name in San Diego sports at the moment for what he did at the Final Four. Your high school is only, I think, 15 miles apart from the Inland Empire. Did you know Lamont growing up?
Nah, we had some similar friends. Like I played basketballs on the JV team, and I remember every time we would play him, it would be shootouts, and he was a baller, and so I know of him, and we have some similar friends. But it would be cool to get out there and connect with him, maybe.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that Lamont has told us over the years is that, basketball players and athletes in general from the Inland Empire, they kind of play with a chip on their shoulder.
Yes,
He
sir.
describes it as basically, all the media, all the attention is on LA, and then the Empire doesn't get that same kind of look. Is does that extend to kind of football as well? And is that kind of chip on your shoulder? I got something to prove. Is that part of how you approach your game? When you play.
Yes, sir. 100%. People are always kind of putting the spotlights on other places, if it's LA or just maybe even San Diego over the IE as far as sports. And I think it kind of just gives you something to play a little harder for, just to kind of know when you're not from like the main area. You just got to be that much better and prove it to people.
No doubt. I remember getting to talk to Lamont at the Final Four after he hit the shot and asking him on the national stage, what is it like to be a kid from the Inland Empire on this kind of a stage, given the fact that like they can't hide the spotlight, they can't move the spotlight
Yeah.
anywhere else. It's on you. He gave a great answer to that. But you also have had the spotlight on yourself. You go out to Florida to the IMG Academy, which is the one of the premier places for high school football in the country. What was your experience there? At times it was a run first offense and, like you said, spread it out and stuff like that. But what led to your decision and what was that year like for you to play there?
Yes, sir. Really just the uncertainty with like football and school in California. So I really wanted to just go back to school and kind of be able to do that and work out and do everything without having to basically live at home, work out at home, do school at home. So that was a big part of it because they had a certain protocol and stuff, but they were still full go, spring ball, winter, all that. So, and then obviously it's like some of the best training, nicest facilities, and then playing with some of the best players in the country. So that was appealing to me there. And then being there, it was just, I would say it was like college before college. It kind of just helped me out with, I was living alone in a dorm. Didn't really see my parents and family as much, and just kind of living on my own, kind of that just prepared me for college. So I think it was a great experience.
Now, you finished up 2 years at Florida State. Obviously, you want to look forward to your future at San Diego State, but just a couple questions about your time there. We all know what happened with the college football playoff decision. Florida State, you guys won. You're undefeated. You won your conference in a Power Five, but you get left out. How did you take that news? How did your teammates take that news when it was announced that Sunday morning?
It was kind of just one of those feelings of like you work so hard for something for a whole year, and just to see that not go your way is just it's not a great feeling. And you feel for everyone, the coaches, players, all of us. It's just because we all had from January until December, you kind of work towards a goal, and you know that supposedly if you win all your games, you're supposed to make it, and then for that not to be there is just it's just disheartening, I would say.
Yeah.
You were robbed, just for the record.
Yeah, pretty much robbed. That's a
Yeah,
good way to put it.
completely.
Absolutely. You got to share the quarterback room at Florida State with Jordan Travis, who's among the, one of the best to ever play the position for the Seminoles. Obviously, unfortunately, he got hurt towards the end of the season, which probably might have had something to do with that decision. But what was it like competing with Jordan? What did you learn from him in your time there?
Shoot, Jordan, what I learned from him was a ton of stuff. I mean, he's a great leader, and just kind of the person he is and how he carries himself. Just you kind of learn little things about how he gets a group of guys to play so hard and just love them the way they did and still do. It's just kind of that aspect of it. And then about like film and what to look for and how he kind of breaks down our opponents weekly was he did that at a high level, in my opinion, and just kind of take away stuff like that. And then, of course, play. You can't really emulate his play. I mean, the guy's a freak of nature, running around, throwing it like that. But you just try and incorporate some of the stuff he does and put it into your game.
So you have your own website, is that right?
Yes, sir.
AJDuffy.com. Yeah, which has your very own licensed apparel. Could you talk a little bit about how that came about as part of the NIL process, and how soon maybe you could see some Scarlet and Black theme things on the website?
Oh no, yeah, some stuff is coming up shortly, probably by the end of this month or early January, and I have a guy named TJ Salamoni who kind of runs the point on that. He was a FSU alum who just kind of was one of my guys, became cool with my family, and just said he would set that up for me, and he's going to continue to do so. So he's one of the guys who will just kind of forever be a supporter and someone I kind of respect well, just because of how he's been kind of by my side for this whole, I would say, process. You know?
Very cool. So AJDuffy.com. So I want to finish this up, man, with some kind of rapid fire, fun, off the field kind of stuff. Just kind of let Aztec Nation get to know you a little bit. Starting off, man, what's your favorite food?
I would say Mexican food or Italian food. I mean, my dad's Italian, so he could really whip it up and cook good. So
You
those
know,
are my top two.
I was gonna say we here at the SDSU podcast, we ask the tough questions. So I can't accept two answers. I need Mexican or Italian, bro. I need the answer because yeah.
I have to go Italian food, man. The pasta's too good.
There you go. And
Yeah.
if you're gonna, what's your go-to pasta?
I like it all. I mean, my dad does baked ziti, spaghetti, all that stuff, shrimp and linguine.
Oh,
You know?
yeah. I'm honestly now curious about the Mexican food, because how could something like you mentioned both of them, you know what I mean? Getting all close to that. But what is your favorite movie or TV show?
I like the movie Friday. I don't know if you've watched it, and all the series with the Friday movies. Those are hilarious.
Completely hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah, I am older than you, so I mean, there's a good chance that I would see it. I've seen
that
Friday.
is true. That
I
is
don't.
true.
I don't even know if you were alive when
That's what
Friday.
I was gonna say. I was gonna say, how do
I,
you know the movie?
I might have been maybe.
Yeah, close. It would
You
be.
know.
It would be pretty close. Yeah, because it was late '90s, right?
Oh
Complete.
no, if it was '90s, then I'm a '02. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's yeah. No, it's great. Absolutely fantastic movie. Hilarious, as you say. How about your favorite musical artist?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I mean, growing up, kind of was just a mix of everyone, and then I've been listening to some country lately. I mean, I was in Tallahassee 2 years, so I like Luke Bryan a lot now.
Okay.
You
All
know?
right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you are not, getting better at football, what is kind of a hobby, something that keeps you busy, something that you enjoy doing?
I love to go fishing, and I have three Frenchies at the house, so messing around with them, taking them on walks, they're always fun to play with.
No doubt. What kind of fishing do you enjoy doing?
Mostly lake fishing for like bass and catfish, and then occasionally deep sea fishing is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have I know when I'd asked you before about a major, you said you're still undecided, looking for something, but just as far as your educational pursuits, I mean, what are maybe some areas of interest that you're thinking about studying or looking into at San Diego State?
As far as my major, I think I'm going in as an econ major.
Okay.
Got you. So I'll see how that goes. I mean, never really been interested in econ, but we'll see. And then stuff I would want to do after would be maybe getting like real estate or finance.
Very cool. Very cool.
I got a economics bachelor's degree, so I thumbs up
How
for
was
that.
that?
It was great. It helped me get into the business world, and eventually I got my master's in business administration. So it's definitely has been beneficial to my life.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. AJ, thank you for the interview. Great job. Congratulations on being able to make this decision. And I think Aztec fans are incredibly excited to, see you on campus and see you in spring ball and have all those things unfold, man.
Yes, sir. I'm fired up to get out there. Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Paul, we got a chance to catch up with AJ Duffy, one of the new quarterbacks that Sean Lewis is bringing to the Mesa in his first year as head coach. You interviewed AJ around the time of his commitment, so you had talked to him a little bit. We got a little bit more in depth, but what are your thoughts about him, as just a person and as a potential quarterback competing to be a starter this upcoming season?
There's a lot. There's a lot to talk about and think about when it comes to what he just shared. But I think the thing that jumps out to me is, he seems to be a very, very like rooted kid in terms of his family, in terms of talking about Josh Hunter as somebody that he grew up with, being connected to Kyle Crum, somebody that he, has known since middle school. And it seems like over his the last few years living in Florida, like he got away from that just by proximity, and he said that he went over there because the high school season in California was uncertain, etc. And so I think that if I'm understanding that about him, I think it's pretty exciting for the possibilities to kind of get that rootedness. Like in the article that I wrote, one of the main things that he mentioned was just how many people have hit him up for about being excited, and they're going to come down to Snapdragon and they're going to see him. And so I think that that aspect of it, the fact that like so many of his answers went to his family, the things that he's connected with, I think at least sounds like a place that San Diego State like is really going to benefit from. Because if somebody is that rooted, that's going to, and they're able to kind of satisfy that, and they're able to live in that. I think that like propels them to be really successful on the field. And so I think that was like the big takeaway and kind of situating where AJ Duffy sits in, as he's about to come to San Diego State.
When I saw that they were initially recruiting him, made him an offer, the I guess the typical response is, okay, that's great, but he's never going to come to San Diego State. And I think there's a Sean Lewis element to it as well. But the more we talk to him, we realize there's other elements to it too, right? The Kyle Crum thing, which wasn't as major because it was middle school, but Josh Hunter, he seemed to be a much bigger thing, as you mentioned as well. Playing for Josh Hunter's dad, Brian Hunter, obviously the former major leaguer. And then, like, I think he off camera, he mentioned that he's got a family member, a parent that has a job and is in San Diego a lot. So those are all a lot of things that outside of Sean Lewis and a quarterback friendly offense, right? There's other things that attracted him to San Diego, and obviously being an hour and away initially in the Inland Empire, and Temecula also helps that too. So those are some reasons where you think, okay, why? Because I think statistically, ranking wise, he might be the highest ranked high school recruit that ended up at San Diego State as a quarterback, right? He's 2 years removed from that, so you can almost throw that stuff away a little bit, but it's still good to look at it and say, okay, I think he was in some cases a top 10 nationally ranked quarterback. I think he was 13th or 14th at 24/7. In comparison, Danny O'Neill is 34th, which is still really, really good.
Yeah.
But it's not 13th, right?
No.
And Vance last year was 39th. So San Diego State, even under the old regime, without a quarterback-friendly offense, still was able to get good quarterbacks, good transfers. Jalen Maiden was a 4-star coming out of high school, went to Mississippi State. But still, I think AJ Duffy is probably at the top of the list when it comes to rankings and accolades. And he's younger than some of these other guys we mentioned that transferred over from Power Fives. So it's going to be really cool to see him in spring ball and see what he can do, because he really hasn't played for 2 years, right? I think you mentioned in your article he's thrown 8 passes in 2 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 7, but yeah, I think it's right.
Yeah, he did throw a touchdown though. One of those 2 completions was a touchdown, I think last year in one of the blowout games that Florida State played that he came in at the end. So I'm intrigued by his potential and his possibilities running the Sean Lewis offense.
Oh, without question. And I think everything that you just said, I think encapsulates it really well, and why everyone, I think, rightfully should be excited. Because the reality is if he lives up to all of the expectation that he had as a prep recruit, um, then that would mean that like he could potentially run Sean Lewis's offense for the next 3 years. And that's, I think, where you really start to see the success of programs. Tulane a few years ago was 2-10, but they kind of took their lumps with an underclassman QB who then turned out to be, somebody who could really run the show for them. And then they, were able to be the G5 representative, and almost again this year they win it back to back. And so I think that that's an interesting aspect. I do think that if you're objectively looking at the quarterback room at San Diego State, I think that there is huge questions. Kyle Crum was mentioned obviously in the interview, and he's the most veteran QB on the roster with 17 some odd pass attempts. And I would argue that given San Diego State's place in the world of college football, they have to, if they're going to build from the high school ranks, which I think they absolutely have to do that, they have to rely on redshirt sophomores to be able to be really good. Like this, when you look at, is San Diego State's going to be good? It's going to be like, okay, can they develop people beginning their redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior year? So I don't think that it's crazy that San Diego State doesn't have, a veteran quarterback who has this experience, and they're, these older guys, especially at the QB position. But it is something to be said, and as they're learning a new offense, it's not like AJ Duffy or anybody else has all of this experience in another offense that can kind of translate and bring it to. But so I think it's obviously going to be a question about how all of those things work out. And I think that, in that same vein, Liu Amabai, Kyle Crum, Tobin Odell, they're all in that same year too, where it's like, this is the time where San Diego State needs to find their guy. And if they're able to do that, whether it's Javance, whether, they get a true freshman who comes in Danny O'Neill, but there is the potential that if one of these young guys is that player, that they could be set up for the next couple of years. And like, short of, one of these guys blowing up and becoming something that kind of a little bit comes out of nowhere in 2024, I mean, they could be really good in 2025, really, really good in 2026. I don't know what you thought about, his description of Sean Lewis, Matt Johnson, people that, we don't know very well. Nobody knows them very well, haven't even been in town for 3 weeks. And tell me about how you feel like that and his description compares to what all the recruits told us about the previous regime, under Coach Hope.
Well, I was actually going to bring that up because anytime you have a coaching change, obviously a new philosophy, a new scheme comes in, but you wonder like the human aspect of it, how that's going to handle. And as long as we've been doing this podcast and we've been interviewing recruits, current players, former players, right? Everything that turned up was about honesty and transparency,
Right.
by the staff, and when they were recruiting them, when they were playing them, and how they compared that to other places that were recruiting them about not being up to that standard. And so far, we've only talked to a few recruits, obviously, in this short, 3-week time frame where Sean Lewis has been here. But we're hearing some of that same stuff, like unprovoked. We're not asking them, hey, are they honest and transparent? But they're bringing it up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Will Cianfrini brought it up. Tate Byer, Anthony McMillan also had mentioned that, and obviously now AJ. So that's definitely a good sign long term as well, because obviously it's new, it's fresh. But at this time next year, if what they were telling them, what these kids don't come to fruition, or these kids believe that they were lied to in any way, that stuff is gonna fester and that stuff is gonna get out, and other recruits are gonna hear that. And so I think that's a really cool thing to hear from these recruits, that they believe in that the same way that the recruits believed in the prior staff. But it's got to have longevity. And I'm sure if we went and talked to Kent State people, recruits and players, they'd say the same thing. And so I think that's the important part is that stuff continues. But it's a good start to build upon, because we know that was a strength from the previous staff. And maybe they lost good recruits because they were honest and transparent, telling them, "Hey, we're not going to hand you the job. We're going to compete here." And maybe some good players decided they didn't want to come here because they thought they should be handed. And so that's something to keep in mind as Sean Lewis's tenure unfolds over the next few years. But I like what I'm hearing from the recruits about their observations from Coach Lewis.
I think it's really good. And I was just in Dallas covering the Texas State Championship. Had plenty of questions going and saying, why is East Village Time going that far east to cover something? And part of the answer is just we try to be informed in what we do, and an opportunity came up to be able to get out there and to see that. And rather than talk about Texas recruiting, which I have from a distance, like I wanted to see it, feel it, be around it. And multiple times. So what I was doing is I was both writing and I was the photographer, right? So I was going from the field to the press box, back down, into the interview room, and just playing all the parts. So as I'm shuttling back and forth and running around, there's all kinds of people who are in the going up to like the Ring of Honor and all these different places that are part of AT&T Stadium, the Cowboys Stadium there in Dallas. And they see the other, the SDSU podcast T-shirt, and they obviously are going to strike up conversations like, oh, so who are the Aztecs after here, and all those kinds of things. And inevitably, they're talking about Jeff Horton, and they're saying Jeff Horton, great guy, Jeff Horton, he recruited our school like crazy. And Coach Horton is, you talk about things that we heard from recruits and people who've been here for a long time and things like that. And chief among the great people that you hear about is Jeff Horton and how much he's respected and all of those things. And of course, Jeff Horton was the quarterback coach at Wisconsin. And one of the players that he coached in his QB room was
Don Lewis.
And so the idea that you're seeing some of the same sort of people skills that are kind of in that commonality, whether it's Rocky Long going and working under Dino Babers, or where there's just this common frame and thought of how you approach football. And so I think it is really, really encouraging. And I also think, if you're going to kind of ruin sincerity and look at it from a business, from a recruiting, from a technical standpoint, I also think it's just really smart because San Diego State has to find ways to be able to stand out, right? You have to find ways to be able to distinguish yourself from everyone else. And as AJ just said, everywhere he's gone in the first recruiting process, not the second one, there's all of these, delusions of grandeur and all of this stuff that people are throwing out to you. And so he said that it was great to see somebody just be honest. And I think that San Diego State, in terms of just trying to create an identity, should lean on, not only because it's the strength of the people who are there, but also it is not the norm. The norm is not, the norm is people talking about getting into the NFL, people guaranteeing you spots. It's about all of these other things, and not about you as a human being. And as Coach Lewis talked about, their goal is to be people first. And so I thought that commonality was really good. Where would you, in the small descriptions that you've heard, and I think this might be a challenging question, which I'm glad I'm asking you and you're not asking me, is how are you getting a feel for Sean Lewis's offense, and where do you see the QB position kind of fitting into that?
In terms of how, if it's going to be pass or run heavy, or what specifically are you asking about?
Yeah, pass, run heavy, formations. You can take it anywhere you like.
Yeah, AJ Duffy in college, in the IMG Academy was a run first offense. He didn't throw a lot of passes his senior year, and he still got recruited, and he still, went to Florida State, which says that people still believed in his potential. And look, as a person, he was willing to go to a run first offense because he knew it would still provide him his opportunities. I mean, I think from what Sean Lewis has talked about, he does want to be balanced, but he also wants to spread the field out, right? Like, I don't think you're going to see a lot of bunch formations where and you're not going to see very much 12 personnel, right? I think, I don't know what the percentage was, but you can make the case that 70+% of the snaps last year were in 12 personnel, with potentially
A lot. That
a lot.
was their
Yeah,
foundation
I
for
don't
sure.
think
100%.
you're probably going to see
Whatever it was.
probably going to see less than 10% in 2024. I think that's a big difference, which means you're going to need, more wide receivers split out. You're going to see running backs split out. A lot of 21 personnel potentially. 4 wide receiver sets. We didn't see a lot of that. I think he's going to run out of those sets, right? You could split out 4 wide and run out of it still. And that's stuff we didn't see a lot last year under Ryan Lindley, under the personnel that they had. And Ryan Lindley talked a lot about, well, our running backs and tight ends are our strengths, so that's why we're going to play a lot of 12, some 13 personnel. And I think bringing in these quarterbacks that have strong arms, that they could run themselves, I think you're going to see a lot of that. Obviously, Jalen Maiden did run himself, and they had designed runs. But I think these guys, it's going to be a little bit more balanced. We haven't seen a lot of AJ Duffy in college, obviously. We haven't Kyle Crum, Tobin Odell. When he came in on the final game of the season, right? He played 3 snaps. 2 of them were designed runs for him, and the third one he ended up running off of a flea flicker that wasn't open. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think you're going to see a lot more wide outs, wide splits, spread guys, a lot less 12 personnel and bunch formation.
Yeah, no, it does answer. I mean, there was no right answer. It was just how you're thinking about it and approaching it. Watching his Duffy's film at IMG, it's hard, right? Because he's playing with an all-star team, and when you have talent, that talent usually wins. And so there's one way to say that, like, there was a clean pocket. I mean, you did not see that. You did not see a ton of pressure in the clips that he saw. The flip side of it is, he was the general, and he seemed to make the right read and be able to say, like, this guy's going to get open. Now it's going to be this guy. Now it's going to be this guy, and be that student of the game, where, a lot of those passes, yes, they're wide open because the skill receivers are there. True. But also that's the design of the offense, and he found the right guys. And so I think that's what they're going to be expecting these QBs to do is, I like the description when I talked to Danny O'Neill. There's always an answer in Sean Lewis's offense, and it's up to the QB to be able to find that answer on the field in real time, in that speed of it. And so I think that when I'm looking at the offense and I'm thinking about where they're at, every description that Sean Lewis has given has talked about that balance in terms of yards. But of course, when you pass the ball, you get more yards than when you run the ball. So to get the same number of yards, you have to run the ball more to be able to, like, make it to get to the same number of yardage. And with the exception of Colorado, he was as run heavy as San Diego State has been. He just does it a lot quicker. And I think that in Sean Lewis's or any up tempo offense that spreads things out, I think the QB run game can become really, really important. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to like have these Michael Vick-esque type guys. You just have to be able to occupy one defender who is going to stay home on a read option, because then you basically made it to where you have a fullback who picks up the guy in the hole for the running back in a traditional offense, because that guy is not going to be in the play to be able to stop the running back. And if he stays home while everybody's spread out, you can win the numbers game. If he doesn't, and you can make him pay for a first down a couple times of the game or things like that, then it that's just moves the chains, and you can do those things. So I do think that, getting back to that, I think that will be a big part of how San Diego State, I think, uses the quarterback in the run game, is to win the numbers game. They're going to need whoever the read person is on some of those plays to stay with the QB, and just give them pause so they can't crash down and get into the runs with the running backs. But I think it's super exciting. There has been a lot of transfers who've been coming in recent days, in addition to high school recruits. They got a grad transfer wide receiver who went to Portland State. He's coming in with over 100 receptions. And they got Colorado, their leading tight end / wide receiver, pass catcher from the tight end position in Sean Lewis's offense at Colorado. He's transferring over to be another weapon. Both of these guys are, you talk about going and running out of 4 wide. They could have kind of like, with the size that these two guys have that they just brought in, they're almost tight ends, and they, just in terms of their size. And so that can really, really, bring that versatility. And so they're trying to bring the weapons around them. I think that Raphael Williams, who transferred to San Diego State at the beginning of last year, who sat out a year because it was his second transfer, I don't think he's talked about enough. As we saw when we were at practice last year, there were practices where he was the best receiver. He obviously had a good spring game, or not a spring game, good. Which one of those two was it? One of those two. He had a good game, whether it was the red and black. It was the spring game. Okay, I couldn't remember it was out of the red and black one. I mean the fall one.
Yeah, because by the time the fall game came, he was already ruled
eligible. That's right.
And I think he was banged up, so he wasn't fully practicing at that point.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's right. So anyway, I think that he can provide an explosive complement. I think that if there's other people around him, I think Mekhi Shaw can really thrive in something like this, and being able to, find the soft spots in the zone, be a sure-handed receiver, be able to have other pieces around him. So yeah, there's a lot of excitement, I think, in what they're trying to do, and, get the opportunity. There's obviously more time between now and the end of the year. I think some people have a little bit of confusion about the transfer portal. Just because somebody can go into the portal doesn't necessarily mean they have to sign by the end of the portal. So, and then guys who are in bowls, after their bowl game ends, they got 5 days in which to enter it. So there's still a lot of time, and it'll be interesting to see. One of the questions with the new staff is like when they hold spring camp, because that had always been earlier with Rocky Long and then with Brady Hoke, and if they would make it later because maybe they want to add more guys and they want to see where everybody is, things of that nature. But lots of like, man, lots of like.
So Sean Lewis did a town hall on the We Believe network last night,
Okay.
Sunday night. He mentioned 8 weeks of winter conditioning,
right.
starting January 15th. So if you do the math, you're looking at potentially a March 11th start of spring ball, which is later. Which is later than they did the last 2 years.
Okay. They started in February.
Last year it started at the end of February.
You're right.
Because they wanted to be done by spring break. This year it looks like it's would potentially start 2 or 3 weeks later than last year.
Okay. All right.
I'm just doing the math off of the 8 weeks. Obviously, we haven't asked yet San Diego State Media Relations, and they may not be ready to either publicize that or may not know. But if you go off of what he said about 8 weeks of winter conditioning, you would potentially be looking at March 11th for the start of spring camp.
Yeah, and it's a good segue into it, man. What a cool opportunity the We Believe Network is.
Yeah.
To be able to have set up that I have not seen it, but I think what is it? They have these special like members only opportunities to be able to connect with and get articles and information about San Diego State's team. And I think it's like what, $7 a month to be able to, I mean, which, if you're a fan, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming that you are already part of the We Believe Network just because, you eat, breathe, and sleep and everything San Diego State sports. But just if you're not, I mean, what a cool opportunity. We obviously know the people who, are helping to run it and do all this stuff. We obviously had Dale Tolver, Aztec Link on the podcast. It's just another way that fans can get connected to the Sean Lewis era, and it's a pretty powerful and cool opportunity. I think that is sorely needed, and now someone stepped up to fill that.
Yeah, it's $7 a month for strictly the We Believe Network access.
Okay.
And it comes with an app that has message boards. It has kind of a feed where not only are the exclusive content that only subscribers can read or watch listed, but there's also content posted on there from other outlets such as ourselves and the Union Tribune and the Daily Aztec and all sorts of stuff, that articles and stuff that other people put out. So it's kind of it could be a one-stop shop if you're looking for all content from about the Aztec. But if you are already an Aztec Link subscriber in the higher plans that are, I think, like more than $7 a month, like the Spear and the Warrior, I don't know what they're called, but if you already are a subscriber, you would get an automatic access to the We Believe Network without having to pay additionally. It's covered within those plans. So if you are, you probably already got an email or something to go join that the app and the network. So it's because it's included. But if you only wanted the We Believe, it's $7 a month. It's pretty cool. Sean Lewis spoke for about 30 minutes or so, took some questions from people in the room, and then there were some questions that people posted that were watching online that he answered. I think they're going to do this more often. Maybe they get other coaches, maybe they get players. But yeah, it's definitely something I think is going to be really cool for fans to get more content. I think over the last 3 or 4 years, the amount of content for San Diego State has definitely grown a lot, and it should grow even more with all these opportunities. And we definitely love to see it ourselves to add on to the things that we're doing. So yeah, it's really cool.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoy the conversation with AJ Duffy, quarterback transfer from Florida State, who will be on campus in January. We'll be out there in spring ball competing with the rest of the quarterbacks for the starting job in the fall. As always, please like, subscribe, share, follow the episode and our podcast Twitter account and Instagram account. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys next time. You are listening to the SDSU podcast presented by the East Village Times with your hosts Andre Hagberdian and Paul Garrison.